Hello, and welcome to another discussion of Traitor's Knot. This is the third out of four discussions for this book. We are reading approximately 150 pages per fortnight. This is the seventh book of the Wars of Light and Shadow series by Janny Wurts. And at the end of every book, we are usually joined by the author in a live stream for any questions that we may have. So if you've been reading along with us, keep an eye out for the live stream in a few weeks from now. With me, of course, I have the usual group of friends. Jared, could you start us off with introductions?
Sure. I am Jared, the Fantasy Thinker, from the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel. Varsha's use of the medieval fortnight kind of screwed me up a little bit, but
medieval. It was all over my grammar textbooks.
But that was very cool. So also on the podcast, Speculative Speculations and Other Fine Podcasts with pagechewing.com. Chris?
My name's Chris Moon from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, also Speculative Speculations, and we had a fortnight reference without a stupid dance that went with it. Varsha, you have to make it up to us before the end of the podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
GB.
I'm still TB Poe. I'm just no podcast of my own yet. Maybe I'll get around to that. And I hang out on Page Chewing and read these books and other books. I'm boring.
Hardly.
Oh, I thought you said I'm bored, not boring. I'm bored too. Can we? So we start with the chapter entitled Aland. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah.
Aland, where Arathorn makes landfall and stirs up trouble by helping steal some silk and some amethyst stones. And then he gets seduced or attempts to be seduced. No, someone attempts to seduce him. Yeah, we struggled with the grammar of that before we started recording too. But yes, thoughts on this very eventful chapter?
Actually, corrections. So they, stole back the emeralds or the amethysts because they weren't supposed to be mined from wherever, people went to where they weren't supposed to for those.
Yeah.
Also, yes, I did, love the. It's like, yes, I'm going to clown on this entire, caravan and all its guards and everything, and with a couple of darts and a bunch of eats, and I'm going to take all your stuff and make you all look stupid. And I'm like, all right. And then, yes, we meet Glendian.
Yeah. It was interesting how he used, he gained the experience of using magic around the Ayats and from previous chapters. And now he's turned that around to use it to his advantage to try and take another tact towards this very costly war that's been going on for forever now. And so it, and that goes along with his vow that he made previously to Davian while he was staying in Kiwar, that he does not want to shed blood anymore. And so he's trying different things to find a way around all this stuff, and who knows how long this is going to hold out for. This how long he's going to be able to keep this vow, and how long he's going to be able to keep up these antics without provoking bloodshed of some sort. It's kind of hard to say I'm not going to cause bloodshed anymore, but then go off and then cause all this trouble that if things go wrong, there's going to be bloodshed. So he's got a fine line here that he's balancing on.
It's just me. He's changed a bit. This whole Davian thing's rubbing off on him a little bit. Nobody else feeling that kind of thing of being like stirring up stuff just because it might be a better way to do it. Like Lysair sort of calls him out a couple of chapters forward when he says like he's not really actually doing anything. You know what I mean? He's just being meddlesome. He's just kind of, you know, it's not changing the state of the war, but it's this idea after Glendian kind of has her way and she kind of decides, well, I'm gonna say that you did this, that, and the other, and he's like, said you like, I'm not even gonna disagree with you, which nearly ends in disaster in some ways, just because he wouldn't kind of tell the truth about it. It seems like Arthur, but slightly not like Arthur as well in some ways, I think.
I mean, now that you mention it, maybe what it reminded me of was Arathon in Ships of Merior, where he's just off doing a lot of different things to get a really grand plan unrolling. Except now it's to, I guess, I think at the time he was preparing for war, but now it's to try and do other things to not have war happen. So I guess the underlying framework of doing system-wide things to prevent war still feels common. But yeah, I think since you brought it up, and if I think about it, maybe he does have a bit more, I guess, of a carefree attitude, maybe less of that he's more confident about his decisions. And we've been told that the maze has changed him. Maybe that's what we're reading into it. I didn't notice it, but yeah, you did. So that's probably what it is.
To some extent, and I think too we're seeing with his newly acquired ability to bridle the effects of the curse as a Peril's Gate. I think we're seeing more of him start to come through instead of just what's focused. I'm trying to remember
Right. Yeah.
in these three I don't remember if it's in here, is the thrust of what he plans does get brought up, but I don't remember if it's in this in these three chapters or not. That's what I'm checking now because
Yeah, maybe this is the Arathon.
this is we did 9, 10, and 11, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, no, the it's chapter 12 has what he's really planning will be revealed.
Oh, jeez.
That's always it's coming in the next page.
Yeah.
Well, it's the second one of the tidbits in there, or one of the subsections for chapter 12.
But, right. Because we did find out that Arathon was somewhat under the auspices of the curse back in Ships and Warhost.
Yeah.
And so now we're seeing him maybe with that under control, and so hopefully that could be the difference you're detecting, Chris, that right there.
Well, he's a lot more willing to fall out with people and create conflict in his wake, than he has been compared to the last. Like, even by the time he gets to Ilstrom and he talks to the Cyberian brothers, he's very happy to just kind of have people on side, warn them, do his bit, and then leave them, rather than kind of trying to pull it all together. Now, he may have a grander plan to pull it all together, but even in terms of the Glendian stuff and the people that are around him there, he puts himself in harm's way because of the chivalrous or otherwise, this idea that she wants to keep her husband at home and not having to go off fight for war for Arathon, and he's not getting away with that. I was like, come on.
Yeah, that did seem a little strange. That section is called Vixen, and it's like I'm kind of wondering what's. I mean, I get her motivation, I get that, but I'm kind of wondering how this is going to tie into everything, because the next section after that was wedding, and so like at the wedding, it was so weird because Arathon's playing the music. Everybody's mad at him, and he's just like, okay, I'm playing the music, and I wasn't sure. I couldn't grasp exactly what was going on with these two sections and exactly how they're going to tie in. And they had a little bit more later on with Glendine and her husband, Kiriel.
Curial.
Yeah, Kiriel. There's a little bit more that was explained later between those two in chapter 10, but I still like trying to figure out how they're going to tie into the greater story later on, other than Arathon just trying to get the clans of Shand on his side, or going with his plan, whatever his plan's going to be,
Actually, I correct myself. The chapter I was thinking of, or is a different one. No, he outlines what what the plan was while he's there talking to the Sabridian brothers before he breaks with them.
Yeah. I thought there was maybe another plan that he had something to do.
I just thought it was further, but the part I was thinking of was something else. So, but yeah, no, he just make it as loud and noisy and unruly as possible to pull Lysair down there, and then bring everywhere but Tizen to bring peace to them, and then suddenly, oh look, Tizen is a secluded backwater that no one wants to bother with, and shut him down that way. Unfortunately, well, you'll see.
Oh.
Yeah. A fellowship sorcerer happened, but not until 2 chapters later. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to Jared's point about this being a little bit, I couldn't really work out what Arathon was getting out of that conflict, if you know what I mean. A lot of it was happening, a lot of, very strong feelings, everybody sort of fighting and mad at him, and him just playing away. It was almost as if, normally Arathon has a plan for that to happen, but I couldn't really see what his angle was there, other than it to come to a resolution that Kiriel, etc., was going to go with him, which he knew at the start. Like it was like almost like it was a bit forced or something.
So I thought what was happening there was he kept having these visions of his far sight visions, where Kiriel, is that how we're saying his name? Kiriel will die with possibly a great chance of not even leaving heirs behind, and Glendale, is that her name? I don't say the names out loud when I'm reading Glendale. When she seduced him, or like did what she did, he had the opportunity to maybe prevent that future. And so if he stayed back, if he got angry, I don't know if he had a farsight vision about how this particular scenario would play out, but there was scope or possibility that Kiriel wouldn't join him up in arms, and that would prevent his early demise. I think that's why he sort of played along, is my understanding of that.
So almost like a free will, because I'm sort of like, right, either you can prevent it and you speak up and Kiriel doesn't go, or you do want them to come and then you kind of face up. Like it was a strange way to play it, if you know what I mean, just to give that sort of play out, because it did create this kind of unnecessary conflict on the side and unnecessarily bad feeling. So,
it was also like Vanden and Talvish just like jumping to the worst conclusion, immediately, they're like, oh, you did this, and then someone's like, what did he, and what did he say that he did? And they're like, well, look at this, and it's like, you're kind of jumping, the gun here, and he wouldn't lie, but he wouldn't,
yeah, but he would know that, though,
people,
he would know that they would jump to those conclusions. They're hot-headed Klansmen, and so of course they're going to jump to conclusions like that. So I'm just kind of wondering if he sees something that is Kiriel gonna play a bigger role in the future, and is his mage sight somehow tied into that? That's what I'm wondering.
We'll see more of Kiriel and Glendian, yes.
Okay, I kind of thought so.
But also,
I know there's a reason it's all there.
I did also like though that like early in the Higher Earl and Kiriel, and it's like I didn't think they were really angry at Erethan. They were just they immediately saw through. They're like, yeah, no, Glendian's messing with you. We get it. Sorry about that.
Well, they didn't even see through. I think Glendale told them what she tried to do, and I got the impression that she meant to do what she said, pretend that she had been raped by Arathon, but when it came to it, she couldn't go through with it, so she ended up confessing about what she did instead, and that's why Kiriel saying, "No, now I'm gonna swear oath to you." But I do agree with you, Chris, in that I found the reasoning of all parties involved in the situation hard to follow along. Like I had to piece it together, and I'm not entirely sure that I know motivations and reasoning for why each person behaved the way, except maybe Glendale. That one was pretty clear what she did all the way
Yeah,
along.
because she comes back, I think, at the wedding, and it's just like, yeah, no, I engineered all of this so that Kiriel would swear allegiance to you because that's the safest place to be.
Yeah. So she did. Maybe she's not privy to Arathon's visions, but Arathon knew that if Kiriel swears oath to him that he's not going to live very long. And so I guess in some ways Glendale brought about what she sought to prevent, which was interesting, an interesting way for that to play out. Maybe Kiriel wouldn't have sworn oath to him if, I don't know if that would have made any difference in terms of how his future would have played out. Maybe just doing things for Arathon would have ended him early. Unalived him early. Sorry, I'll shut up. But, yes, we brought up Talvish and Van Dorn's reactions for a bit. How I'll be a therapist for a moment. How did that make you feel? Yeah.
Frustrated.
Yes.
Yeah, very frustrated. It was almost as if we were kind of dancing around in circles a little bit with this hot-headed kind of emotive kind of stuff flying around there when you were just like, right, okay, we've sort of seen that kind of thing before in some ways, and it sort of feels a little superfluous, in that moment, as opposed to, some other previous moments, I'm being there.
It's a good insight into how Erethan's initiate trained and whatnot, and he doesn't really show himself to people, so they don't really know who he really is like he's not shown that even people who've known him for years still don't fully grasp what he's thinking and feeling and whatnot. It's like Dakar's known him how long now, and Dakar still gets it wrong.
Well, but Dakar knows enough by now to, for instance, not immediately suspect him of wrongdoing. He gives him severely the benefit of doubt, which, yes, Dakar was turned around quite severely to his cause. But I feel like that was somewhat true with Talvish and Van Dorn as well. So they're showing themselves to be extremely foolish here by immediately jumping to conclusions without even asking him any questions. We saw, I think, a somewhat similar scene when he was giving Jarrett maid sight back in, what was it, the previous book, right, Peril's Gate. And the what did they call themselves, the brothers? No, the
companions.
The companions. Yes, they got mad at him that you're hurting our chieftain, and that's fine because they have a lot of baggage when it comes to Arathon. He was responsible for, in their minds, responsible for the destruction of their families, and they don't really have cause to love him yet. But these two have been with him for years. And so to have them so quickly come to conclusions without really asking what happened, like they didn't ask him a single thing. And that's bothering me. And
Yeah, frustration.
yes. Frustration.
And what I'm trying to remember what was their relation to Glendian. Were they immediate? Were they family? Were they just
They're just, you know,
clan
they're both
relation?
clansfolk. That's all.
Just clansfolk. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
they
think
just
it would
there.
depend upon how well they knew her, because if they saw her come out in a messed up state, you know, would, you know, I don't know. I guess it would be a natural reaction for them to be a little taken aback at that. But
Yeah, it is possible that so at some point they mentioned that they feel guilty for letting her through and sort of allowing the bad thing to happen to her. So maybe the guilt is taking priority over whatever. Like she did come out in a bad state, so immediately they blamed themselves and they couldn't stomach that. Maybe so they wanna. And no, it's not that they don't stomach. They do accept it. They do freely accept it, but maybe they don't want to reduce their own guilt by giving him the benefit of doubt, perhaps. That's one way to look at it, I suppose. But it
right.
it did, yeah, I did not enjoy reading that scene very much. But yes, the use of the EATs we did talk about that briefly, but I loved that we brought that back, and hopefully we'll see more of it, because when the EATs work for you, I love to see them in action. When they're not wrecking your ship.
Yeah.
Doesn't he? Yeah, he definitely goes on to, after he leaves the Klansman and he's running around with the car, he uses them again to drain all the wine barrels.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, is that the next chapter? There were some things there that I didn't fully follow, so maybe we'll get to that.
Yeah, that's when he's running around with the car and they're, you know, stirring up, getting everybody drunk and happy, and
Chapter 10, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one more thing in chapter 9. There was a line that was because he was talking to Alara through their connection, and it came up that the Coriani practice of weaving sigils of applied force was now revealed as a needless misuse of the balance of Ath's creation. And I think we kind of already knew that ourselves, but this was Arathon and Alara really coming to that conclusion. And I just thought it was an interesting line to point out for, future consideration. In chapter 9.
And she also has this thought connected to that at some point in possibly the not so distant future, she will have to come into conflict with the way the enchantresses do things, because she can achieve possibly the same or a lot more without engaging in coercion. But that's the only way the enchantresses know to operate, that we've seen at least, or that I remember.
Right. Yeah.
So that conflict is going to be interesting.
Yeah, Coriani know only one way to raise power.
Yeah. I think what these last two books have done for me, that I think at least up to Grand Conspiracy, I was sort of like waiting for Arathon chapters. Now Arathon chapters are just like any other chapters, because every other thread is just as interesting for me. So yeah, I'm very interested even in, dare I say, what's happening with Lysa. And I think Sulfanevant has a big role to play in that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Chris is the Sulfan stan, right?
Yeah, Sulfan stan, not Team Lysa. Sulfan's tattoo is getting ordered.
Yes, just interested in seeing Lysa be what what's that? Told off by Salfinevin.
A lot. Yeah, he does that quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah, so then we go into chapter 10, and we have.
Before we move on, can I
Oh,
just
well,
draw
one more
our
thing.
attention to the last news item
Ooh.
of
The
chapter
last one.
9?
Chapter 9. Yes,
The
gimme.
So, at the edge of the windswept wastes of Atania, the warden of Ulthian dreams of a sinister figure riding the Camry Road and black webs of horror spinning cold shadows in Jalab, Darkling, and Atara. And the clean, searing line of the summons arcs out, touching a distant shade, a raven, and an tenuous plea, an eagle that soars in the icy winds of high altitude.
What does that mean?
He begged Davian to come help.
Yes, well, he
Davian
was. I mean,
showed
that
up.
was essentially it. So, but interestingly, the three people who were discorporate
Hmm. Yes.
at some
Oh.
stage,
Hmm.
which is I thought was worth drawing attention to. I mean, it was just sort of laid out there in some ways. I know everybody else is sort of tied up, but these three people that we're talking about here is Cardamon, Traith, and Davian have been discorporate at some stage, and we are dealing with necromancers as well.
Hmm.
And I'm very aware that the Scorpion is not dead, but it sits somewhere in the middle between
Yeah.
life and death, and that actually it feels to me there's got to be something happening there. There's got to be something that is tied to that kind of in-between state, especially Davian, because we still don't know really what Davian's game is at all. That was really the whole way through. I know I missed the last kind of thing, but Davian is sort of playing both sides still, and he could be actually doing anything in this case, and he's still so resistant to kind of doing it, like this whole thing. But yeah, I just thought I'd point that out before we move on, because I thought it was worth
Yeah.
worth drawing
Also,
an eye to.
in that same news reel, number 2, somebody has Alera's personal quartz crystal, a courier, and what's going on? It's like somebody else has her crystal, and they're taking it to Celadie Prime.
Yeah, it was returned to the Sisterhood back in Pearl's Gate.
It was returned to the Sisterhood by Alera?
Well, via Ask the Depths, because she was going to clear the crystal.
So the Adepts. Oh, the Adepts are returning it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because the
freedom. Yeah.
If it had crossed,
right.
It requested to go back, but also if it had crossed the threshold of the Ask the Adept, it would have, shattered. And
that's right.
Been cleared, and then the Celadie would know about the fact that the longevity binding on Alera, that they put in was has been erased.
Mm.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Huh. Yeah, I was wondering what happened there. I'd forgotten that Alera had already sent the crystal back. So this is interesting. She's going to get a hold of it, and we'll see what she does with it, I suppose. Yeah. So I had a question that made me think of something, what you said, Chris, about Davian, we know, can go discorporate and is now sort of, I don't know if he can still become sort of ethereal like Luhain and Karadmon can, but they do you think the right that Luhain and Dakar had to do together, because they needed a foothold both in the living world and the afterlife, Davian could have done by himself? No.
I don't know.
Interesting.
That's a good question, indeed.
Yeah, I'd be curious about that. But also, how did Karadmon come back? Did we see him return? Did he return because Asandi took care of the rates for the moment?
When did he come back?
He was in. Who was he talking to? Oh yeah, he was the one who took Elaine to the
Oh, yes,
Adept
that's right. So I
hospital.
did. Yeah, to the Adepts.
Mhm.
Yeah, he finished his
His
laying
warding
traps
or
and
his
whatnot,
return. Yeah.
and came back at least temporarily. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. And so at the beginning of chapter 10, Davian is arguing with Sethvir
Yep.
over the use of Arathon, and he's pointing out the conflict in the Fellowship's choices, like what to spare, like the monarchy or the compact.
Mm-hmm.
And so him and Sethvir are kind of going back and forth about
Yep.
that stuff.
You've missed the most important thing in this chapter. It's a
Yeah.
travesty. Sethvir's beard got mismangled.
I thought you were going to say it got tears in it, because that comes later on too.
Yes, Davian made Sethvir cry.
Right? Yeah. I thought that's what you were going for.
No, just when he startles the Adept, and she cuts his beard.
She cuts his
Oh,
beard.
yes, that's
That's right.
right.
Part of the balls to the ground. Now his beard's all messed, and I'm like, yeah, well,
He's like, it'll grow back. It's fine. I'm like, no, it's not fine. You have a big hole on your face.
Yeah, because Davian says it's a double jeopardy throw. Let's see which priority rules your choice this time. Our binding made under the will of the dragons to preserve the mysteries for Paravian survival, or else the bleeding heart clemency that gives rise to the threat allowed in by the compact. So it seems that Davian, he's not fond of this bleeding heart clemency.
Yeah.
So does that give us a clue into some of his motivations?
It's almost as if he's trying to force some sort of movement on either the compact or the attitudes of what the sorcerers are doing. It's almost like he's working towards that end in some ways to get them to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
There's also this line: your system of clan intercession based on a law administered by the High Kingships is unstable. I have no desire to labor for ages with failure, the axe blade poised over my neck.
Yeah. And so this is a little tiny clue about maybe what he's trying to accomplish with what he did with Arathon.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, when Arathon was talking with him, Davian was the sole dissenting voice about what to do when humanity showed up.
Right.
He's like, no, resupply them and send them on their way.
But now that they're here, he incited the rebellion that got several of the High Kings, or all of them, killed, and led to their running across the desert to Dassen Eller, right? That why he did that, I still don't feel like I have clues to understand. Maybe a little bit, but
Davian also gets a bit bullshit with Sethvir in the fact that he's basically saying, I've done more for Arathon in such a short space of time than you've done in his entire time being here, in terms of like giving him the wherewithal to break free of the curse, kind of educate him over the time that he's been in Kiwar. Before that, like, what have you guys been doing? It's
there's also I've this whole conversation was very cryptic. I feel like it would be very rewarding to reread when we know more about what's going on with Davian. There's also this paragraph where he essentially, so I think it tells us a few things. Where, let me read it first, I guess. The question beckons, Sethvir, does it not? Can you say in the depths of your tormented dreams you have not pursued the temptation to just walk away, cross fate's wheel and be done? Leave Athira's fate to fall or to languish. Why not let the flow of the mysteries fail? Death is the mask that drives the illusion. Why not let the darkness unveil its own light and resurrect its next hope of salvation. So he's essentially saying it's fine if the Paravians die, something else will come in their place, right? And two, I thought, based on Caradmon and Luhain, and something that was said either earlier in this book or in Peril's Gate, that they kind of had no choice but to become discorporate if they died, if they lost their physical body. But it seems like they have a choice to stay and not cross fate's wheel. So that was interesting. That Luhain and Caradmon, I think, are here by choice to continue fulfilling the compact.
Yeah.
I highlighted a lot in this chapter, mostly because I didn't understand I needed to talk about it. There's also this really nice line that's nothing to do with the conversation, but the silence cut while the far distant stars spun their undying splendor across the black arc of the deep. Which is actually maybe does have something to do with the conversation, because why invoke distant stars across the black arc of the deep, right? Of all the what images to invoke.
Yeah, I mean, it gives us a little reminder that there's more to the universe than just Athera, and that we're also reminded that the humans originally didn't come from here, and that the Fellowship were star travelers, or are star travelers, maybe still, but were at one point star travelers, in that they there's just a bigger universe out there, and it's a nice poetical line to remind us of that. Those
They
things
might be capital H humans,
That reminds me, there's a spider camping out in my wash basin for the last week. I don't know if it's Portia or Moriel. Like, which is it? Should I give it food and make it my pet, or should I get rid of it?
Nobody's ever seen those two in the same room together. Let's not discount the possibility they are one and the same.
Next, Moriel's next incarnation is Portia. Those are some Children of Time references. Sorry for the digression.
Oh no, I've read it. Yeah, I like the the bit where Sethvir's when he's talking to Davian and he relays the bits about Rayet, Datara, and description of what's happening with Rayet's spy network and the necromancers, and the frankly horrifying prospect of, oh yeah, they'll turn his spy network and Lysair's religion into a mass of thousands and thousands of enslaved puppets to feed upon.
Yeah, the implications of that are
that's kind of horrifying.
Are horrifying. Yeah, that could really get out of control, and that could turn this world and this continent and this planet into a real horrific place that would, like an apocalypse. That would be like an apocalypse, basically, on this area, where you would have that necromancers being in control of a population, which would become basically a slave population to their whims. And you can just go on and on with the ramifications of them being in power and in charge, and it's really really quite frightening.
And I think zombie armies, like, you have to do something like open up running water on them. Because there is a sorry, that was a Swamp Thing reference again. I keep bringing up these other books that I've read, but there is this inherent threat in zombie armies, in that killing makes them worse, or like if you kill, like, the people who are fighting on the opposite side could stand to go over to the zombie side and make that army bigger, right? So we need usually a clever way to end that, and I don't think we know yet what the clever way is in this world to get rid of the undead. Do we? Or what did
Well,
Alf and Evan use?
Usually ritual death, and they mentioned, cleansing by white fire, mage fire.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we do see the one, but that Davian mentions that whatever they do at Atara, you can send the discorporates to clear out J-Lot and Darkling, but whatever they go do at Atara requires someone in the flesh.
Got it.
And he's like, how convenient with you and Asander busy. He's like, who's gonna do that for you?
Indeed.
Not Arathon. Not yet. Not until chapter 11. Well, actually, he tells him that already, that you should pull Arathon in. And then Sethweir cries a little bit and then sends Draith to go get Arathon.
Tears in his beard. The
Mm,
new number single
except
from
maybe
the
it went to the
band.
so maybe it went to the part of his face that didn't have the beard anymore.
Mm.
Oh, it did. It actually did. That slid through the hacked gap in his beard. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Sethweir's Day is on the covers of Sorcerer Weekly are numbered.
He also refers to him as Callum Kincaid.
Yes.
Yep.
Calls him by that name, invoking whatever history that brings with it, I imagine. Pray tell Callum Kincaid for what? A future that brings us mankind's execution? Sorry, Jared.
That name sounds familiar. I think it was in one of the short stories.
It was.
Yeah.
I am yet to read that short story, but we know that it's one. It was a name that. Did she name the person Moriel in?
I think it came up before.
Yeah.
Moriel names Callum Kincaid and Fugitive Prince.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, right. Yeah.
So we already knew before because I think Chibipo told us when that reference came up, and also you've read the short stories. But is this the first time that the connection has been made proper to the world destroyers that Moriel mentioned? And or has that come up before? I think what Matt had a moment of realization a few weeks ago, so maybe this is not the first reference.
References I can think of where his name's come up in the series so far. Partially referenced in Curse of the Mistwraith, how Sundir calls Sethweir Cal.
Right.
Then the first time we get the full name is when Moriel, blows her top at Sethweir, which is hilarious. When you stop and think about it, ranting about that. And then the short story, of course, once you read Sundering Star, he's mentioned there. And then mentioned here, but I don't believe there's any other references so far. Well, there's one to come. His name will come up again, but that's later.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you about that.
Please, pretty please, with a cherry on top.
Bad girl. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Chad.
Well, no. So then we have Arathon and Dakar carrying out trouble, causing trouble all over the place, incognito, kind of speak. They're like you said earlier, using the ayats to drain the wine and stuff like that. And I found it amusing that Arathon's using blonde hair to disguise himself.
Oh, that's right. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that was amusing. So, lots of
the 80s period.
Yeah. But then we get to the part where Elaine finds out about Kavar and finds out that Lysaea didn't know about the murder, and she also is reunited with Kavar. So that was actually quite a touching moment. It was
Yes.
very nice. Yeah.
It was.
That was what, like 4 paragraphs, but it it was heartrending. I loved that scene.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really was nicely done.
Yes.
Did we catch the caravan that Arathan and Dakar beat up with? Did you catch which caravan that was?
Oh,
No.
wait. Did I miss it?
Do
Which
tell.
Those were the same guys that he victimized with the Ayats.
Oh,
Oh, that okay. The ones that showed up in town with the silk, right?
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
Lancers, that he went and caught up to. Yeah, that was them.
Yeah, that makes sense
And
because
then
they had
got him all drunk and played music for him and everything.
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought it was hilarious that the singer, the free singer, which we knew was Arathon, there was this line where he's talking to he's the woman comes into the bar and she's looking for her husband and she's all mad. She's all mad because he's like drinking all night, whatever. And Arathon kind of pokes the bear. He's like, if the rose is such thorns, no wonder the poor tongue-lashed creatures are drawn to embrace the joy of the tankard.
Oh no! And then he got even better. I know he's playing to the crowd, but I thought it was also just kind of mean-spirited.
Yeah, a little bit.
You could almost see it as mean-spirited because he just started playing a parody song at her, and every time she started ranting, he just paused to let her bits go in.
It was. I was
he's
laughing.
kind of humiliating this woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I liked that the barkeeps had a history with the woman. Like they were so afraid of her. Sometimes they'd send the husband home any way possible. But I thought it was really interesting that he's able to sort of rise up all this dissent just through sort of humorous ballads, and two, I think that all of their dare I say fanaticism or just whatever their fear is and their loyalty towards the light, all of that is sort of taking a backseat to whatever they see as oppression, and they are living under fear that anything that they say that could be misinterpreted could now cause them hurt, right? Like we saw with that conversation with the with the caravan that they vandalized. They needed to stick together so that they don't get thrown into what I guess burnt at the stake for siding with the shadow. And so I think 4 books back or 15 years back, he wouldn't be able to to sow discontent kind of how he's doing it now. I guess the light the rule of the light has had long enough to make it start to chafe and feel like oppression, that they're now like happy to listen to these songs of dissent, I suppose. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and like with the and then he's finding the people that are just like the prostitutes and whatnot, the sex workers that got their hands on the outfit, the temple uniforms, and started wearing them, and whatnot, and because they're all pissed at the light, because they've persecuted all their means to herb witches and whatnot, so they don't have ways to deal with unplanned pregnancy. And
and that's a good point, Faja, because it seems to be a different social feel as to people's attitudes towards the light that Arathon's trying to exploit by going to all these different places and subtly insinuating these pointing out the faults and the deficits and stuff like that of the Alliance of the Light as he's going on, and he's trying to do it in a manner that's, of course, humorous and fun, and so that people are taking this in, but they're not. It's not being waved in their face and as something that they have to be like, oh, we better not say anything, you know. It's like, oh, this guy's singing about it's kind of fun, and then he moves on. So it's implanted in their minds as he's going along, and it's I think you had a good point. I don't think it's something he could have done even a couple years ago, when Lysaea was a bit more at his height in power, when his inner circle wasn't overthrown by necromancers, and when he didn't go through that whole ordeal in with being taken over by a necromancer himself and all that stuff. So I think the light's position has been a little bit weakened because of these events, and I think Arathon's taken full advantage of this in the way he best knows how.
And compare this to, I forget his name, it started with an F. I think the bard we saw at the very beginning, in Curse of the Mistwraith, who was about to be burnt at the stake for singing songs that were against the light. So now, well, first of all, he's Arathon, so he's going to be able to get away with this, but he doesn't have people chasing him down or trying to arrest him yet. So it could be that bard didn't make his songs humorous, but it's also, I guess, speaks to the state of mind of the population at the moment. I think my mic's misbehaving. I'll be right back.
Yeah, maybe that other bard just wasn't a good comedian. Who knows? You muted, Chris.
Maybe he's just not a good enough singer. That's just one of those things. He's got a bad message and he can't sing. He's crap. Kick him. Yeah. To be fair, like Arathon has good form for stirring up trouble anyway. Ball back to Geolot when he basically literally brought the house down with his his display of lyricism and message.
Pure talent through there.
Indeed. So I thought that little sequence injected a bit of humor into the actual story itself, because everything around it's a bit more heavy, especially what's to come up with Sultan and Lysaea and their return to a world that's been taken over.
Yes, indeed. So we do have in the news item at the end of chapter 10, the last one, we have the necromancers are sacrificing people. Is that right? Do I get that right?
Oh,
I missed
at
that.
the end of chapter 10?
Yes, and Sethvir senses a wrongness with the pulse of the stone near Atara, and again tastes the tang of innocence let blood. And the shudder of horror disturbs his gaunt frame. And so it's, some bad things are happening.
Oh, I thought, okay, that's interesting. I read that as the same sort of ceremony that got Lysaea, where I think all it took was cutting open his hand, right? I thought that's what the let blood was, but it could mean, I see now, that they were actually killing people.
Oh yeah, I took it that way. I took it that they were killing people. But maybe it's not as bad as that. But I don't know. That shudder of horror kind of got to me. So.
Yeah. Either way, I think they're taking over the bodies and trapping the spirits of the people that had those bodies, I guess.
Sure.
So whichever it is, it's pretty bad. I think it's the same amount of bad, because it's not the physical damage that's the worst of this situation, right?
True that.
Did we talk? No, we didn't talk about Glendale and Kiriel showing up at Inish, and I think that section I got a little confused through.
Me too.
That
I'm not sure exactly what happened there.
So I think there would. I figured this out later in the chapter, I think, but and I'm not sure if I have it right. But Kirill was trying to control some bullocks of his cart, and then his wife showed up in a second cart, and they were part of the crew that was taking the silk to the prostitutes, right? And they weren't supposed to be there. Neither of them was supposed to be there. But I don't know why Kirill went, but Glendale wanted to talk to Fiark for some reason. But and she did get to talk to him.
Fiark didn't Fiark kind of yell at both of them, like,
yeah, his people beat them up so that they don't reveal themselves.
Right. Right. That's right. Yeah. But I didn't understand what he was up to. I didn't quite get what Kirill was up to, really.
Yeah. I thought I saw a line there about why Kirill was there, but I don't remember it.
It's all flown over me. I remember the scene, but I don't remember of anything real important other than that kind of revealing who was who, kind of thing. Somebody else turning up.
I like that moment of commiseration that Fiark shares with Kirill. Like, please don't let your wife meet my sister.
Sister, yeah.
Because that's exactly who Glendale reminded me of. With, I guess, her I'll do whatever I want attitude, and I guess how people have sort of resigned themselves to put up with it.
These powerful women.
Yes. What else?
So was Fiark supposed to take the silk that was stolen from the caravans somewhere on Arathon's orders, or?
I think I forget whether they took this silk to the prostitutes, because these were the finished uniforms, and then there was a second set of silk, maybe part of the same caravan, or maybe it came in a different shipment, I don't know, that they took to the priest. Those were unfinished uniforms, and they used for the tailor to make a fool of those priests.
Right. Yep. Okay.
But I don't know which of these two Fiark's men were responsible for delivering. Possibly both. But also, if those came in the caravan, did the men of the caravan then deliver the same silk? Or was this just a different shipment altogether? Or did they use the silk that they stole, minus the red silk that they gave Glendale for her wedding? Did they use the rest of it to wreak this havoc? Unclear where the silk came from. We need to know the origin of all the silks in this chapter.
Oh, the white silk was the ones that he stole, where he's like, that's for something later.
Okay, and that was what he did, like with the priests, right?
Priests,
but what about the uniforms that the prostitutes wore? Was that?
That's the bit where the priests, they were like, we're supposed to get completed uniforms, because he'd waylaid the uniforms somewhere, and or cut them off so that they only brought the silk, the raw silk, and then got them to undress so that they could be fitted with the tailor that was just a car, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting. I didn't make
fitting, and then walked off with their uniforms and gave them to the prostitutes.
Okay. So maybe Fiark's people were responsible for the uniforms, and the silk came from the caravan. But anyway, it's fine. I guess it's not super important, but I need to know. Next, Salfin Evenden Lysair.
That was actually a pretty tense beginning of a chapter there, but chapter 11. I mean, first you had Sulfin and Lysaea just talking, and it was interesting. He invites him into the bath, and they're talking, and the thing that a line that stood out to me was that because he was betrayed, Sulfin knew of the damage incurred by betrayal of a mother, a beloved wife, so to speak, and now Elaine. And I was like, so he's pondering on a defection of every woman that Lysaea has been involved with over to, quote, the enemy. And I was just like, that kind of wraps up a lot of Lysaea's issues, and very insightful by Sulfin on Sulfin's part there, dealing with Lysaea. Once again we see him as being this very insightful person and a very like the reason why Chris likes him so much. And so and then of course, yeah, big heart. And then of course then he goes too far, right? Bringing up Arathon, doing all this stuff, and of course Lysaea, the curse takes over, and we have a lot of tense action at that point.
Did he not do it on purpose, though?
The what?
Did he not do it on purpose? Like, I know he says he goes too far. I think he instigated that whole thing, because his reaction to it and how cool he was in the aftermath of it was like he expected it to happen.
Mm.
It was like
Yeah,
poking the bear. So? Yeah. Because the upshot of it at the end of it, and again, I might be giving something too much credit because I think he's just awesome, is that Lysaea is actually aware of the curse for the first time, actually, the effect of the curse on himself for the first time in the entire story. When every other time he's been able to burst it off and say, no, it's because, and this time he lost his cool and lost his calm. He doesn't remember trying to kill him and accepts that he did try and kill him actually when he came to.
Yeah. Do you think Sulfin's that calculated?
Yes.
Oh, you, Varsha. Let me ask Varsha. Do you think
Sulfin's
calculated?
Do I think? I mean, I do think he's smart and he's calculating. Well, not in a bad way, but I feel like this scene was a case of him losing control of the situation. That he didn't willfully cause Lysaea's reaction, because he's been fearful of provoking Lysaea ever since he saw that scene at, was it Dandramon, where Lysaea burned up most of his army, and he's been thinking back that, like, that's been a constant background of fear for him whenever he and he knows, I guess Asandi told him about the curse in more detail than he probably knew of it before. And so I feel like this scene, he just stepped into something that he didn't mean to.
Yeah, you're right. He because later after Lysaea wakes up, he's when he's talking to him, at first, and he's like, you insist that I'm cursed, that my half brother's crimes are all innocent. And then Sulfin's like, doesn't immediately say anything, but it remarks that it's like, along with 6 horrified witnesses, he watched as the warning, hard spark rekindled and canceled the soul-searching depths of a just man's innate awareness. So, and then he's like, oh yeah, no, I gotta say something now, because that Lysaea not saying anything, immediately, made Lysaea think you intended to oppose him, and he's, trying to talk him around.
This was the part that made me think that I think this, what Chibipo you said, was the scene that came after the bath, right, when he's recovering from his prior bout of insanity. This, in the middle of the conversation in the bath, when I forget what it is he says, but Sulfan Event ceased breathing, confronted by the horrific change that presaged the Mistrate's curse. So that feels like someone who's stepped into a trap, right? And the silence in this case comes to hurt him. And then the second time around, he's like, nope, that didn't go well for me, so I'd better say something. And he had to pick his words carefully the second time around.
Yeah, because he was like, Lysair's like, yeah, because Lysair does the whole, arch, or puts his hand behind his, head, like he's leaning back kind of thing, clasping his hands at the back of his neck, and it's like, yeah, well, Erethan's in, in Elestron right now. And Sultan's like, wait, what? And, that sets it off. And then, Lysair's all like, I hear his footsteps, where he walks, and Sultan's like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, when Sulfan says, you know this for certain, like, are you sure that he's there?
Yeah, and then he realizes it's like, yeah, I just stepped in.
Too late. He awoke to the danger. His query was seen as obstruction. That's the rule of the light in a nutshell.
But it is interesting because Sulfan and Lysair's relationship has been stressed ever since the start Traitor's Knot altogether. They have not sort of been on the same page at all, even though Sulfan is one of the few people that is very loyal to him around that we know. Like, we know that certainly but from Lysair's point of view, everything's sort of fallen apart for him. You know?
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, have we gotten a Lysair perspective in this book? I'm curious to see how he's taking all the dissent that he's been getting from Sulfan Event. He seems to be putting up with it, at least, and maybe even slightly, if not appreciative of it. He's like, yeah, it's just my little puppy is just barking at me. It's fine. But yeah, I'm curious from Lysair's point of view how he feels about this, and actually how he feels in the aftermath of his reaction, because he almost killed Sulfan Event. And did they have a conversation about that later?
He was definitely sorry about it.
Yeah,
and he I forget what he said, but he definitely he was kind of horrified with himself that he almost killed him, and but he because he said don't go, like Sulfan was going to leave, and he was like, no, don't go, stay with me, and so he's he definitely values him as his second. There's no doubt about that. And it was kind of interesting because before, when he was showing off with the his laser pointer finger, shooting stuff out of the sky, and it was kind of like the old pull, and he shoots stuff with his light, but and then he was kind of tormenting the diplomats from the various factions of the town and what have you, and he was being very cocky, and he was being kind of making his point, about him being the light and all that stuff, and Sulfan just went along with it. He grumbled a few times, but he's definitely still the loyal lapdog that Lysair wants, and so I don't think he wants to get rid of him anytime soon.
He even tells Lysair that even if I'm paraphrasing, but I think he says, even if I disagree with you, I'll be right there next to you. If you die, I die. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool. And the protection that Asandi gave Sulfan Event, that served to protect him against Lysair's outburst. And it was sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that it was interesting because Lysa basically says, "You got to make sure nobody sees that. Like, oh, I'm allowed to see it, nobody else is allowed to see it at all." And literally about 10 pages later, everybody's seen it.
It was almost funny how they're like, like clutching their pearls.
Yeah, and I love how the steward comes in, and he's so no nonsense. Like, all right, let's clean this up. Come on.
This is something they see on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else in this chapter? Yeah, and I loved the opening that Evand gave. Sorry, is Evand his last name? Probably not. Sulfan Evand gave Asandir to protect him from whatever he needed to, which we know the Fellowship sorcerers, we've seen them sort of take advantage to do more than they probably should. But Trait, when he talks to Arathon about why Lysa got no training whatsoever, is like they tried. He didn't even give them an opening that they could sort of use or misuse to give him some training. He outright denied it. We saw that conversation in Curse of the Mystery. So yeah, that was interesting that they wanted to teach Lysair, but he did not give them an opening that allowed them to. But it's also, I guess they never ask, like, let me help you. They never want to interfere in that way, which is interesting. They mostly just give hints of, hey, how about this? And then if people fall into, like, even with Ilera, for instance, they gave her several hints about how she can leave the binds of the Koryani order, but she hasn't taken it yet.
Right.
I thought it was interesting, and just to step back a little bit, how Lysair is show strength. It was almost like a threat to everybody else, with his arrow getting shot in the air, basically heading towards the ground, while he's basically reaffirming his importance in the world and all the rest of it. But it was quite dark and stark in a lot of ways, in terms of this use of magic and power very overtly, even when he's been sort of preaching about how evil Arathon is, and obviously Arathon's not totally blameless, as we kind of made through a lot of deaths at his hand as well. But it was like almost, like I said, it was very dark show of power, in some ways, for him to do. Yeah, it was very brash. Yeah, that's exactly the word that I should have said. For thanks, Jack.
Nice.
You should have made that point.
Oh, didn't I? No.
You probably did, as we discussed already. And I probably just repeated something you said just a short while ago.
No time loops here.
All right, get working on that tattoo, Chris. All right. Oh boy.
All right.
Okay. Oh, and then Arathon's little showdown at the Bridian
Oh yes.
Fortress there, and there was something about that. His discussion with the clan Bridian, that stood out to me, and I was like, when he's sitting there telling him, this is what's going to happen if you don't follow my plan, and they're, of course, like, nobody's ever taken over our place, and we're going to defend it to the death, and blah 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 blah. And then I'm like thinking about it, and I'm looking. Chibi Poe is going to stay muted because I'm looking at the title of the next book we're going to read, and I'm like, oh,
they're not going to listen.
It's called Storm Fortress. I wonder what fortress is going to get stormed. and after that conversation, I was like, I think I know now.
But it's also very on brand for the Saburian brothers to not be full of hubris, and absolutely. He must have known going in. I was just sort of a bit disappointed we didn't get to see more of Dame Noir in that period as well. Like, we've seen a bit of her, and she does the kind of aloofness of busy. Like, I loved her retort at the end of basically saying, It's not going to impact me, guys. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't care.
I'm 80-something years old.
Oh, Jesus.
I love
Yeah.
the same amount.
This is on
Right.
you. I do whatever you think and all that kind of stuff. But it
That's
was
actually
kind
a
of an interesting way in.
That's actually a brilliant piece of characterization that she had that attitude. It's like,
Yeah.
you guys, I'm not going to live to see it either way, you know?
Mm.
And that there's a certain, I don't know, a certain perspective from somebody, an elder of that age, who's trying to do best for her kids and her grandkids and everybody else there, her clan, but knows enough that she's not going to change minds by just complaining at them, and that she has to take other measures and other means, and she's very crafty, and it's just, and that kind of attitude and foresight is just great characterization for somebody with that experience in that age, and I thought it was very well done. Yeah.
And there's also a bit of chastisement in the way she phrased it, right? She says, "My grandsons are all grown men, and yours are still babies." And in calling, and she's obviously referring to these Brydian men, right? And so she's calling them grown men, meaning like grow up and make the right decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might have read too much into that sentence, but I love the way she phrased it. The grown men portion of it.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, since my youngest grandchild is a grown man, I assume that's Mirren
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
that she's referring to there.
they're all her grandchildren, are they not?
But he's
Yeah,
the
but I think
youngest.
Mirren's the youngest.
He's the youngest. Is he
Oh.
the youngest? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
I
think he's
wasn't
the
sure about
youngest.
that. Yeah.
Mm.
I think it's Brenzian, the twins, Keldmar and Perian, and then Mirren.
Oh, I didn't realize two of them were twins.
But again, just to go back to my previous point, it's interesting how Lysair convinced people to come on side and how Arathon in the same place had to do it. One covertly, had to get in covertly and pretend to just be a dude. But ultimately just ended up storming out and basically making his point and then leaving.
A blonde dude.
A blonde dude. I might turn up next week. Blonde week.
There you go. Oh, you got it.
I've tried it with the glasses, right? And you recognize me, so glasses aren't going to work. Blonde wig next.
Remember though, he was a ginger at one point while he was running around.
Was that as
Yeah.
Medlier?
No, he was brown haired as Medlier, but in this
Oh, yeah.
chapters, he was a carrot, as I described, a carrot top at one point.
Yeah, I think the people talking to Lysair said that the priests who came to complain, was that them? They said that it's a bard with many different bards,
Many
but
different
based
bards, yeah.
on how they
Yeah.
look. But we know it's probably the spinner of darkness, right?
You say that with such sinister.
Spinner of
Spinner of
darkness.
darkness.
I feel like just that title has a weight to it.
Yeah, it
I
does.
mean, if ever you outed yourself as Team Lysair, then you just did in that phrase.
Just in saying it that way, right?
Just
Yeah,
in saying, yeah, exactly right.
should have called him Master of Shadow. Then everything would have been all right. I've outed
Yeah.
myself. It's fine.
I knew it.
I'll be the Lysair stand to your Sulfin stand.
It's fine. I'll probably not make it to the end of the book, but you know, it's fine. Let's go.
Wait, you think you'll change your mind about Sulfin? Oh,
No, I'm
that
not sure.
character
Sulfin might not make it to the end of the book.
yeah. I'm wondering. I don't know if there's a time gap between the end of this arc and the next one. I want Sulfin to continue through the rest of the series, but probably not if there's going to be a time gap. We'll see.
We just need Sulfin to kill Rhett. That's a big showdown. That's what I want to see. That would be a great scene.
Interesting. Yes, that would be interesting. So Riot is not in control, right? He was taken over by the necromancers. He didn't actually participate in the necromancy based on some things that came up.
Yeah,
In this
they've
section.
enslaved him.
He's
Okay.
basically fallen to the dark side.
Okay.
Dark side.
And he's got a bunch of Drake heads to help. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What else? We had and then Arathon and Trait.
Yes.
Oh,
And-
yeah, right. What exactly happened there? I was kind of.
Well, Traith enlisted him to basically give up what he was going to do to help do something for the world because there's nobody else to do it essentially. So he was teaching him how to travel, basically him and Dakar, how to basically travel using circles.
He was teaching Arathon and Dakar how to do that.
Yeah, isn't that what he said? I don't know if he did it. That's what he says. I'm going to have to teach you how to do that. And that's where the conversation about Lysair refusing or not asking for help at that stage sort of came from. I think that was in around the same area.
Yeah, he let Arathon know about Lysair having his incident, and but there was a lot of talk between them about current events and stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, what I understood is that Arathon's going to have to go kill a bunch of priests to make the necromancy, to remove the necromancy stronghold from Etara, and that's going to, as before, make him look bad, create more Spinner of Darkness stories about him.
Pretty much. There's nobody else to quell those rebellions that are popping up.
Yeah.
And they can't let them get out of hand because they get too strong essentially.
And because of the detour he has to take to do this, and because of the additional fear that's going to be incited by what he does, all of the work that he's done so far and his later plans to bring the clans and townsmen together is going to be killed dead.
Yep. So he's not going to make it to Jensa. He's not going to make it to yeah.
I thought he still is. He gets that detour to go to talk to.
Well, that was the original plan. Was to I don't remember where he was to go next, but then he was going to end up with Jensa Sabalamint.
But
at the end,
I think where Trait was sending them, he still had time for the detour.
did he? Okay.
think-
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was definitely missing one out, wasn't he? He was definitely not going to be able to do them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they're
the
planning
next
to go to Melhala
Yeah.
next, and then from there to Hawithawood.
And
okay.
And all the clansmen that he mobilized with his plan, I think, are going to be exposed now to whatever what backlash there is from his dealing with the necromancy. Yeah.
Very likely, yeah. He's he's kind of pissed off because all his plans are kind of in ruins now.
And so there was a brief there was also something interesting when he was begging the Bridian brothers to break their fortress down and leave. He said that if Jensa refused to listen to him, that he would invoke his right as High King, essentially, which means he has to complete the ritual. So he's willing to make that sacrifice to bring this about. And I wonder now, since he's still going to get the detour, and I believe Trait said that he's giving him the detour so that he can loop in his clansmen to dealing with the people at Etara. Will he still have to do that if Jensa refuses to listen? I feel like, do you think he'll turn her around, or do you think he'll have to use the other way? Well, I suppose he would choose to not get them involved in this particular endeavor. The other one, maybe he would have invoked his rights, but perhaps this one he's fine if they don't get involved, because there's a greater chance that they'll die horrible deaths.
Spinner of
We might even see the spirit of Jarrett.
Ooh, why you want to
Oh.
get my hopes up like that? Why, Chris?
I'm just very aware that we've got a story about necromancy now, and there's been a lot of very important people died, so to speak, or just corporate,
Ooh.
and you know.
Interesting. Okay, I like that. I'll take it. I'll take that bit of hope. What do you guys? Well, okay. One last thing to talk about, and then I want to maybe go around either doing predictions or things that we're more excited to read about. One of the news items for this chapter, was it 11, was that Asandir's horse now has a successor. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. that was. I mean, what was interesting about it was that it was worthy of a news item. So it makes me wonder why the horse is so important.
Well, that's interesting because like it was born, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be some years before a year or two before you can use it or whatever. So yeah, you got to wonder like how is that going? That's just like that's like one of those little nuggets she throws in there that you don't see till 2 or 3 books later or something like that, and it'll come up eventually.
Yeah. Do you think is the horse like the sorcerers and the spellbinders? Like in that, can Asandi keep him alive indefinitely as long as the horse allows it, of course? And so, will this horse serve someone who's not Asandir or say Arathon for whatever reason?
Only if the horse wants to.
Only if the horse wants to. Or is he meant to be, when Asandir's horse dies, will become Asandir's horse?
Maybe you need a horse to be a sorcerer. I don't know. Maybe they can
That's where
just
your
give
power
one to
comes from.
Dakar. Yeah, Dakar's got a horse, that can carry his weight, which, to be honest, this horse will need to be about, more than a couple of years old to be able to just carry Dakar around. Maybe that's what's needed for Rain, whoever else could be.
Yes. One of the upcoming books is called Initiate's Trial. That's where we find out whether Arathon is worthy of this horse.
There you go. Solved.
Solved.
Trial. Would it be Arathon that's on trial or Dakar?
Oh, good question. Yeah. Because he is also, he's an initiate master. So who's the initiate referenced in that book? I've been very curious
Could
about
even
that.
be Lyser. It could be anybody. It could be Kiwar, or it could be Kevor. It could be anybody. Yeah.
Hilaire is a Coriani initiate.
Absolutely.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Interesting.
Could be Lorenda.
Yeah, okay, that would be interesting. I don't like Lorenda, but a book centered around her. Yes, I'd read it. Okay. This could go anywhere.
There's a lot of ground to cover before we get anywhere near that book. Let's put it that way.
But there's just one book and 3 chapters between here and there.
Yeah, like nothing happens in even one chapter. Dear God. Well, to that point,
turn the world around on its head.
One of my big queries about this, because just about every other book that we've read, I think, in the series, I think it's been sort of clear where the book was heading to, if you know what I mean, where it was kind of culminating to. This one, I'm not so sure. There's so many threads kind of all over the place. It doesn't seem like it's going to be able to manifest in a single outcome. Like what Grand Conspiracy was obviously towards the plot with
Lorenda, yeah.
Lorenda's plot at the end of it, and so we've had various points along the way Ken New was building towards. This one, not quite so obvious for me, even 3 chapters out.
I guess that's a good segue into doing predictions / what do you think, what are you most interested to see in the upcoming 3 chapters? Because, well, we know that the Bridian fortress is probably going to be stormed. And, so is that going to be a consequence of the dealings of necromancy, or is that just Lyser's, what we saw him planning to deal with the defection of Catrick, come to what, like, basically the culmination of that. Do you think so? Do you think this book will finish dealing with the necromancers, or is that going to be for the next book? Because the next book is also the end of this arc. So
Yeah,
there may still be a lot of loose ends from this book that will
I
be
would
tied up
imagine
in the
so.
next book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe these because the next Storm Fortress, I of course I'm picturing a siege, and I'm picturing it's going to be the Alliance of Light against, taking
Cyberneans.
revenge on the Beridian clan for
Mhm.
betraying them and what have you. So I think that's going to be the focus of that book, and I'm wondering if some of the necromancer stuff's going to be put on hold for after the Alliance of Light is either broken or successful, depending upon what happens in the next book. I don't know.
But you've got to imagine that Arthur will deal with the necromancy. His first real encounter with the necromancy will happen before the end of this book. We've got 3
maybe.
chapters to go.
Yeah.
I think that will happen somewhere in here. Phelan and Fjark have had probably a bigger role in this book, probably than any other book, and I'm not entirely sure where they would fit into where the story's sort of going at the moment, which is sort of interesting. And then, of course, our Celadie Prime, very quiet.
Yes.
Very
Who
quiet.
will now have Elera's crystal at hand.
Mhm.
This and we've also seen a lot of prophecy of people dying, right?
Mhm.
If it comes to a point where the fortress is sieged, all the Beridian brothers will die with their families. We are seeing the end of Kirield, and I feel like I'm missing a few as well. A lot of dire deaths that are coming up, which I believe Arathon was looking to prevent, but now he can't work on that anymore, and so he needs to prevent it a different way, perhaps. or also it could end with the death of the Brilliance, the arc. It's
Mhm.
we don't know.
Stormed Fortress could just be a fortress with a storm over the top of it.
I would like that.
I would like that. Oh, nice.
So for me, I'm most eager, like, yeah, these are all very interesting threads, but what I'm most eager to see is Lyser, Elaine, and Kevor, because he's headed to the Adept hostel. I think that's the third news item of chapter 11. And there was another, Arathon Jensa, what's her name?
Jensa.
That conversation should be interesting.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of all the action-oriented threads that are open, I'm interested in upcoming conversations between people.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else to talk about before we do outros? Yeah. Nice.
We're good.
Let's do outros. Chiripo, could you start us off?
Well, yeah, I'm Chibi-Po still, and I hang out on Page Chewing and lurk around on Twitter, and that's where I can be found. Chris, go.
Yeah, my name's Chris. Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, Speculative Speculations podcast with some other fine fellows here. And hanging out the Page Tune forums. Sure.
In a fortnight, you will see us again. And you'll see us on the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel. And you can also find me on Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts on pagechewing.com.
The Speculative Speculations podcast is weekly, not fortnightly. You can find me on the YouTube channel, Reading by the Rainy Mountain, hanging out on the Patreon forum, and on the Speculative Speculations podcast. These discussions, as always, for the Wars of Light and Shadow and pretty much everything that we plan on Patreon are open to anybody interested. So if you'd like to come talk to us about these books, consider checking out the Patreon forum. You can talk to us either here in the discussions. If you're camera shy, you can turn your camera off, or come talk to us on the forum using forum threads. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in a fortnight. Bye.